They say your life flashes before your eyes right before death, but that's not what happened to me. When I came close to dying, I didn't see a slideshow of childhood memories or feel the warmth of past love. I saw something else. Something I still can't forget. I was 34 when it happened. At the time, I worked freelance as a wildlife photographer and often traveled deep into remote forest regions for days at a time. That October, I went off the grid into a thick stretch of Oregon forest that had once been home to a small logging community, one that vanished mysteriously in the late 70s. I'd heard the rumors, strange disappearances, voices in the woods, even whispers of rituals. I didn't care. The forest was undisturbed and beautiful, perfect for my work. I hiked in 10 miles, set up camp, and by the time the sun dropped behind the peaks, I had a small fire going and a tripod set up to shoot the stars. At first, I thought the unease was just the isolation creeping in. I'd done this dozens of times, but this spot felt different, too quiet. No animal sounds. No rustling. The wind would blow, and it was like the trees were holding their breath. That first night, I woke around 2 a.m. to the sound of twigs snapping near my tent. I froze listening. More snapping. Not random, deliberate. Footsteps. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. I grabbed my flashlight and zipped open the tent, but no one was there. Just trees, the dead leaves crunching beneath my boots, and a deep blackness beyond the firelight that seemed to swallow everything. Then I saw them, 3 small totems made of sticks and feathers hanging from a branch above my tent. They hadn't been there when I set up camp. I didn't know what they meant, but something in my chest dropped. I should have left then. I should have packed up and gone. But I stayed. I told myself it was probably just a prank. I told myself I was imagining things. But I didn't sleep again that night. And by morning I realized someone, or something, had been inside my camp. I woke up to find my gear moved around. My tripod was missing. My pack had been opened, and everything inside was damp, as if it had been dragged through the stream 30 feet away. There were footprints too, not boot prints but bare feet, small and sunken deep into the soil. I checked my camera, and when I reviewed the footage from the night before, my blood ran cold. At 3:41 a.m., the camera, which had been set to record time-lapse images of the stars, snapped a shot of a tall, thin figure standing just outside the edge of the firelight. The next shot? Closer. Then closer again. Until, in the last image, all I could see was a pale face, wide eyes, and a smile that didn't look human. It was inches from the lens. I don't remember the next hour clearly. I ran. Left the camera, the gear, everything. I just ran. But I didn't get far. Within 20 minutes, I realized I was going in circles. The forest had changed. The map didn't match. The landmarks were wrong. It was like the trees had moved when I wasn't looking. By sunset, I was hopelessly lost. My compass spun in circles, and even the GPS backup I finally tried showed blank. Just static. Then the hallucinations began, at least I thought they were. I started seeing people in the trees. Not walking, hanging. Their eyes were open. Mouths agape like they were screaming silently. At first, they disappeared when I blinked. But by the second night, they didn't vanish anymore. They watched me. And they moved. On the third day, I passed what looked like an old fire pit, and lying beside it was a journal. Half-soaked, pages torn. The entries were frantic, from someone who had been lost here too. They spoke of the watchers, of the ones beneath the bark, and ended abruptly with the final line, "You only leave if they let you." That night, I tried to climb a ridge to get signal. I fell. Hard. Hit my head. When I opened my eyes, everything was silent, and I saw it. A tall figure of wood and bone, half-human, half-rotting tree, crawling toward me with too many limbs. My vision blurred. My breath stopped. And just before I blacked out, it whispered my name. I don't know how long I was unconscious. Hours? Days. But what I do know is that I wasn't just dreaming. I was somewhere else. A place that felt like dying, but slower. A tunnel of blackness and whispering where I wasn't alone. I could hear them crawling alongside me. Sometimes behind, sometimes ahead. In that place nothing made sense. Time, light, even pain. But the fear was real. I remembered every second of it. I saw flashes, bodies wrapped in vines, faces staring through tree trunks like windows. I screamed, but there was no sound. Just the feeling of falling endlessly downward into something ancient and hungry. And then I saw a door. Not a real one, but a kind of opening in the dark. I moved toward it, and the closer I got, the louder the whispering became. My name over and over again. But it wasn't just whispering. It was begging. It wanted me to come in. To stay. I almost did. My body was cold and I felt my heart slowing. It would have been so easy to let go. But I remembered my brother. He died when we were kids, drowned in a lake while I watched, frozen. I always blamed myself. And in that moment I heard his voice. Not in my head, not as memory, but real, close and terrified. Don't let them take you. That jolted me awake. I gasped like I had been drowning for hours. My lungs burned. My legs were numb. But I was alive. I was lying at the base of a ravine, head bleeding, with no idea how long I'd been there. But the figure was gone. The forest, while still silent, felt different, lighter. I don't know how I made it out. I walked for what felt like a day straight, until I stumbled onto a ranger station with cracked lips, a busted ankle, and a look on my face that made the rangers stop what they were doing and rush me inside. They patched me up. Called it a head injury. A fever dream. The rangers chalked the strange things up to dehydration, maybe a mild psychotic episode from isolation. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And the worst part? It didn't stay in the forest. When I got back to the city, things kept happening. Shadows would stretch too far at night. I'd hear whispers in the silence of my apartment. I'd wake up with bark dust in my bed. And once, I woke up with a fresh cut on my shoulder, 3 claw-like slashes, identical to the markings on the trees near my old camp. I've moved 5 times since then. Changed jobs. Cut ties with nearly everyone. But they still follow. They always follow. Every time I see a tree line, I hear that voice again, my brother's but distorted, "Don't let them take you," again. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really left that place. If maybe this is just a version of me they sent back, empty, hollow. Just a shell haunted by whatever I almost became. I've never returned to the woods. Never will. I keep the camera though. I never deleted the photos. Every now and then I look at the final image, the one with the face pressed to the lens. It looks almost human. Almost. But its eyes are bottomless. Like tunnels. Like mouths. And sometimes when I stare long enough, I swear I see my own reflection in them, smiling back. I've survived a lot of close calls, but nothing comes close to what happened the night I died, and came back. I was a paramedic for 12 years, the kind of guy who thought he'd seen everything. Stabbings, overdoses, suicide calls, you name it. But I wasn't ready for what happened to me last winter. It was late, around 2 a.m., snow falling thick and fast, and I had just wrapped a long shift. I was driving home on a narrow mountain road just outside Boise when a deer ran out in front of me. I swerved. Overcorrected. The tires lost traction, and the next thing I knew, my SUV flipped off the side of the road and down into the ravine. I hit my head hard. Everything went black. When I came to, I was upside down, strapped in my seat, blood pouring from my scalp, the windshield shattered into spiderwebs. I couldn't move my legs. I could barely breathe. My phone was crushed, and the only sound I could hear was the clicking of the hazard lights. Faint and steady. I tried yelling, but nothing came out. Then it got cold. Freezing cold, like something was sucking the warmth right out of me. And then, I wasn't in the car anymore. I was above it, looking down at the wreck. At my own body. I didn't feel pain, just a dull pull like gravity in reverse. I floated higher, and for a moment I saw everything with clarity, the trees, the road, even the stars overhead. But then I saw something else. Standing near the wreck. A tall, faceless figure with long arms that stretched down to the snow, slowly circling the crash site like it was inspecting prey. I watched in horror as it leaned close to the wreck, placing its long hand on the shattered window. It never looked at me, but somehow I knew it knew I was there. I tried to scream, to move, to do anything, but I couldn't. And then, just like that, I was back in my body. And I wasn't alone. The air inside the car was different, heavier. I started hearing whispers from behind the crushed dashboard, like voices trying to crawl through the broken vents. I passed out again, but not before hearing something scrape across the roof. When I woke again, I was in a body bag. No, I'm not joking. The zipper was halfway up. I was in the back of an ambulance, already tagged as DOA, dead on arrival. I remember the panic, the screaming inside my head, but my limbs wouldn't respond. It was like my soul had made it back, but my body hadn't caught up. After what felt like hours of being trapped in a meat suit, something finally clicked, and I gasped. The EMTs nearly jumped out of their skin. They unzipped the bag, pulled me out, and stared like they were seeing a ghost. I was rushed into the ER, scanned, stabilized, questioned by a dozen doctors. But here's the part no one could explain. My vitals had flatlined for over 45 minutes. Long enough for hypothermia, brain damage, even death. Yet I was talking, alert and conscious. When they showed me the EKG recording, it clearly showed a flat line, until a massive surge of activity like something forced my heart back into rhythm. but no one could say what. One nurse, an older woman, pulled me aside later and whispered, "You shouldn't be here. Someone brought you back and it wasn't us." She looked terrified. In the weeks that followed, I tried to move on, go back to normal. But nothing felt normal. I started having dreams. No, not dreams. Memories. Of a place dark and vast, with walls made of shifting ash and echoes that didn't belong to any human voice. In the dreams, I wasn't alone. I was being watched. I would walk through long, endless corridors made of bone and stone, and every time I turned a corner, I'd catch a glimpse of the same faceless figure from the crash. But in the dreams, it spoke. Its voice was not sound, it was a feeling, a cold weight in my skull. It told me I had crossed too far, and that I brought something back with me. I woke each night soaked in sweat, the sheets twisted and the windows fogged from the inside. Worse, electrical devices in my house started shorting out. My phone rang with no caller, and every time I answered, all I could hear was static, and that same whispering from the wreck. Then I noticed the mark. A bruise just below my ribs. A dark, almost claw-shaped imprint that hadn't been there before the accident. Doctors said it was probably from the seatbelt. But it didn't fade. It darkened. And every time I looked in the mirror, I felt like something was staring through me. I stopped sleeping. My heart would randomly race in the middle of the night. One time, I coughed up something black and sticky. I don't know what it was, but when I wiped it on a tissue, it moved, twitched, like it was alive. I burned the tissue immediately. Then came the shadows. They no longer waited for me to sleep. They were there in the corners, in the mirror, in the reflection of my coffee table. I was no longer alone, and I knew I had brought something back from that tunnel of death that wasn't meant for the living. It's been almost a year since the crash. I still have the mark. I still hear the whispers. But I've learned to live with them. Why? Because something worse happened. A few months ago, a friend of mine, a fellow paramedic, died in a car accident on that same mountain road. But when I went to the funeral, I saw something standing at the edge of the service. The same figure. No face. No shadow. No reflection in the water. I tried to ignore it, but that night I had another vision. Not a dream, a warning. I was back in the body bag. But this time I didn't wake up. I felt myself suffocating inside it, clawing at the zipper trying to get out. And I saw my friend, watching, unmoving, his mouth open like he wanted to scream but couldn't. When I woke, I had a thought that won't leave me alone. Maybe something had to be taken in exchange for my return. Maybe when I cheated death, it just chose someone else. Now I don't go near forests. I don't drive at night. I keep every mirror covered in my home. I sleep with the lights on and salt around my bed, not because I believe in that stuff, but because whatever this thing is, it does. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can feel it inside me like it's still trying to crawl out. I wasn't saved. I was claimed. I don't tell people this story to scare them. I tell it because someone out there is going to experience something similar. Maybe it's already happening to you. And when it does, you need to understand one thing. If you ever die and come back, don't celebrate too soon. You may not be the one who returned. I've worked construction for most of my life. Tough jobs and tough places. But nothing prepared me for what happened beneath the surface of Maple Ridge. We were expanding the lower section of an old hydro tunnel system, something built during the 1950s Cold War era. Concrete, tight quarters, damp air. It was supposed to be a routine reinforcement project. I was down there with two others just past the third support beam when the ceiling gave out. It was sudden, no warning. Just a violent crunch like the earth bit down on itself. The tunnel caved in. My partners were thrown back. I was swallowed whole. Buried alive beneath tons of rubble and dust. My flashlight cracked, flickered, and died. I was left in pitch-black silence. At first I panicked, screamed, kicked, clawed at the debris. But the more I struggled, the more I realized how far down I had fallen. There was no way back up. I was wedged between stone and steel, my ribs burning, one leg pinned, my helmet gone. The air was thick with dust. I could taste the soil in my throat. And then, as my lungs began to tighten and the sound of dripping water echoed around me, I heard something else. Not falling rocks. Not shifting earth. But a rhythm. Slow. Repeating. Like breathing but not mine. Something was down there with me. And it wasn't digging for rescue. I lost all track of time. Maybe it was an hour. Maybe 6. But I remember the first time I heard the voice. A low whisper, just behind the concrete wall beside my face. Said my name. Clear as day. Eli. I froze. I thought it was a hallucination. Lack of oxygen. But then I heard it again, closer this time. Eli, it's okay. Just breathe. It was my father's voice. Thing is, my dad died 3 years ago. He was crushed in a similar accident in another tunnel system halfway across the country. I remember shaking, pressing my hands over my ears, telling myself I was losing it. But the voice came back, softer, soothing. You're almost home. Then I heard scratching behind the wall. Not rats. Not water. Nails. Scraping like someone trying to claw their way in. I managed to drag myself a few feet forward, using a rebar rod to push off. That's when I found the shaft, an old maintenance corridor that wasn't in any of the blueprints. It looked ancient, covered in mold and rusted bolts. And I swear to you, it breathed. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and every time I blinked, the corridor seemed to stretch farther. I had two options: stay and suffocate or move forward into whatever that thing was. I chose the second. I wish I hadn't. The moment I entered that passage, the air grew colder, the silence louder. And then I heard something whisper back, not like my father, but like 100 voices overlapping, chanting. They knew my name. They knew everything about me. My childhood. My sins. My fears. I crawled for what felt like hours. My knees bled. My head spun. But the deeper I went, the more the tunnel began to change. The concrete turned to stone. The rusted bolts turned into jagged roots. I wasn't in the tunnel anymore. I don't know where I was. I found myself in a cavern lit by a faint, unnatural glow, from no source I could find. The space was enormous, silent except for the breathing walls. And in the center of it, I saw something that made my blood stop cold. Hundreds of old hard hats, tools, gear, strewn in a perfect circle like a ritual site. Some were from decades ago. Others looked brand new. It was a graveyard. But there were no bodies. Just their belongings, and the unmistakable feeling that I wasn't supposed to be seeing any of it. Then I saw movement. A shadow sliding across the far wall, enormous and shapeless. It didn't have eyes or limbs or form, it was like darkness come alive. And it knew I had entered its space. I turned to run, but the tunnel behind me had vanished. The stone sealed itself like a wound healing shut. I collapsed to the floor, sobbing, coughing up dirt, thinking this was it. That I had crossed some spiritual or hellish threshold no human was meant to cross. But then a light, a piercing beam, broke through the wall behind me. A rescue team. After nearly 17 hours underground, they pulled me out. I was unconscious, barely breathing, dehydrated and broken. But here's the kicker. When I described the shaft I crawled through, the engineer said it didn't exist. There were no records, no access points, and no signs of it, except the rebar I carried with me, which was bent into a spiral. I spent 3 months in recovery. Physically, I was lucky. No permanent damage. But mentally? I was wrecked. I stopped going underground. Even basements make me panic. I started seeing things in my dreams. The same cavern. The same circle of gear. But now the gear was mine. My hard hat. My jacket. My boots. And something always waits outside the circle. Watching. Growing. Every time I think I've moved on, it finds a new way to remind me I didn't leave alone. Just a few weeks ago, I found fresh dirt on my bathroom floor. Red clay like from the tunnel. No one had been in the house. Doors locked. Windows shut. I swept it away. The next night it was back, along with a single line scratched into my mirror. You're not done yet. I'm telling this story because I know someone else will go underground and feel what I did, that wrongness in the air. That sense of being watched by something older than time. Whatever I found down there wasn't a ghost or a hallucination. It was a presence and it still wants me. I think it collects the people who die beneath the earth. And the ones who survive? Maybe we're just marked, walking invitations for it to try again. So if you ever find yourself trapped in a place where light can't reach, and you hear someone you love calling your name from behind the wall, don't answer. Because whatever's whispering, remembers you. And it's waiting for a second chance.